Hearthstone Grandmasters. This is our third match of the day, despite what one of the idiot casters said just before we left for that break. And it is going to be a good one, Gia, here for our third match of the day. We're, of course, staying with Division B, and we got DawN versus SamuelTsao for the absolute crunch time match here today. Both of these players right down towards the bottom, but DawN has managed to have a little bit of a redemption in the last week, winning his last couple of matches to bring himself up to 2 and 3, whereas SamuelTsao is still yet to get a single win on the board.
Yeah, to be completely realistic here, if SamuelTsao is to have any hope of even dodging the automatic relegation spots, he has to win every series left, and crucially against DawN, because that's one of the people he could potentially be tied with, but also DawN has to lose all of his matches for SamuelTsao to have anything go his way. It's got to be a huge miracle, and this is already one of the deciding points of that. So it's going to come down to both of the players playing at best, and much to my chagrin, it came down to another Mage game.
It may do indeed. SamuelTsao going with the very, very popular, and I think with fair reason, Mage deck here, which has been dubbed Mage, as it is not the Highlander Mage that you may be used to, the Reno Mage. It runs duplicates of most of its cards here, and I think relies almost entirely, it feels like, on cheating out these big spells early with Dragoncaster and Tortollan Pilgrim.
I thought you were going to say relies almost entirely on RNG, which you wouldn't be very wrong. But it takes, as you said, that very powerful combo of getting caster with an expensive spell to get to that point where the RNG comes into play. And I'm going to avoid talking about this deck for as long as humanly possible. So as long as it's not on the screen, I'm going to pretend it does not exist. DawN with a much more standard lineup. The Hunter is something I'm really enjoying seeing throughout this weekend. And the Demon Hunter that we had featured a while ago is running that Worgen Infiltrator tech, which could potentially hurt or harm DawN in the upcoming matchups.
And I will say, Gia, I think that DawN has had one of the most interesting kind of character arcs over Grandmasters here in terms of his overall play. Because I think at the start, he was looking pretty strong, I think. He was making some very good plays. He was feeling quite comfortable in himself. And then things started going wrong. Don't know what it was, but he just started losing. Ended up right down at the bottom with Frosty and SamuelTsao. And it all culminated in his match against Tyler, where he just messed up what wasn't lethal. He thought it was lethal, just completely miscounted. And I feel like that kind of broke him, to be perfectly honest. That was rock bottom for him in terms of his Hearthstone play, and you could just see how devastated he was. Whereas now, the last two games we've seen from him, he has been not the DawN that we know. He has been very, very kind of downtrodden is the word I would use to describe it, I think. Not very exuberant at all, and just taking each game very, very calmly and as it comes. And since then, I've liked his play a lot more. I think he's actually starting to turn around because he just hit the absolute worst it's possible to feel.
I mean, it pains me to say that it takes DawN giving up his jovial demeanor to play at his best. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but he definitely visibly got into a different mindset ever since that big misplay. And, you know, from the limited experience I have trying to translate Korean chats in streams, sometimes the fan base can be very hard on their favorite streamers, the people that they follow, especially the pro players that are representing their country as a whole, especially noted as a region that excels in esports, know what the title is. So I think that DawN has had a lot to consider even outside of what we've seen him struggle with in GM. And now I'm really excited to see how that character arc culminates, as you put it.
I grow impatient.
As will I. Whereas for SamuelTsao, it's been a slightly different story. I don't know, to be perfectly honest, it hasn't had much ups and downs for me here. I think it's just been kind of a rough go for him right from the start, whether it be some of his misplays that we've disliked along the way, or just getting some bad beats, of course, to go along with it, to end up down at 0-4. Basically, I'm not really seeing anything in particular that will drive his change. He's just going to have to pray that he is playing on point today, and also things start to go his way in terms of the RNG with that Mage later on.
Already a very intricate exchange of early turns there. I really like the fact that DawN coined out the beaming sidekick alongside his blazing battle mage. It feels like the most impactful time for that sidekick to come down is on turn 1 alongside a 1-drop, especially when you have the follow-up of Umberwing. SamuelTsao was faced with that decision point of whether he wanted to go for, say, just hero power base, Battlefiend face to get down the Fellwing. But I think I prefer that more measured approach of slightly damaging the Blazing Battle Mage and taking the value trades where it was available.
I completely agree. And of course, completely deleting turn 2 from DawN there means that he can set up for the very clever play here of, the hero power first, then the Umberwing to save all the charges. I like that a lot. And now it sets up again for just a decent turn here for SamuelTsao with the Satyr Overseer. But already, Gia, the tech that we highlighted at the start of the day from DawN is coming in huge here.
I am really happy to see Worgen Infiltrator's inclusion coming to fruition now, because I really don't think it got to show its stuff in that mirror between Chonsu and Surrender, where Chonsu had the Worgen Infiltrator. Surrender's hand was very awkward lined up against those infiltrators. It was Umberwing into Umberwing, so Chonsu was left in that awkward position of how long do I want to keep these stealth? Are they even going to get value at some point? But now I think this is closer to the average outcome, that if you get the Worgen Infiltrator earlier, it can shut off not just the Satyr Overseer, but the Frenzied Fellwing.
Because to be perfectly honest here, what are you going to do? Not play the Satyr Overseer? That's even worse. Then the Worgen just stays infiltrated forever, and you just never attack, and you never get to get it down at all.
Yeah, SamuelTsao just kind of has to bite the bullet here. Essentially serve up his Overseer as fodder to this lowly, innocuous 2-1 stealth. And then go back to the drawing board, hope that his follow-up development could be better. But as it stands, it's just not there. It's a Fellwing, and then just try to stay alive into the Skull turn.
Which he will be able to do, at the very least. Just I-beam, hopefully, depending on what his draw is. And then just clearing off as much of the board as possible. He'll be able to get to the Skull, which may be enough to pull him into the lead, because DawN is obviously left with no card for it.
Yep, but the swing for DawN on this turn is so powerful. Worgen comes in so clutch here, and he's able to also just hero power away that other 2 to take back the full board control. And going into the turn 5 for SamuelTsao, Warglaves is a little bit scary here for DawN, but pretty much every other card I think is fine.
It's an awkward as all heck turn here for SamuelTsao, where, hero power and then swing face to activate the Frenzied Fellwing means he could play all the cards in his hand apart from... Oh no, not quite. Yeah, he's just got to go for it this way. The Fellwing isn't coming down on this turn.
Right. It's still quite decent for SamuelTsao, mostly because DawN's follow-up is still pretty much his early game. I think that's a Chaos Stripe off the top. Could come in very handy here to cycle DawN towards his better mid-game options. We're talking Warglaze, we're talking Glaive-bound Adept, or even the Frozen Shadow Weavers to start shutting off those options on the other side.
Yeah, I think I'd really like to see the Chaos Strike on this turn, because most of the power plays for Demon Hunter are 5 mana, or 6 mana, of course, for the Skull of Gul'dan. At which point you can't play Chaos Strike and whatever comes off the top on the following turn.
It's true. He needs to get the cycle mana out of the way, and he still gets to equip the Umberwing afterward, make sure he doesn't expend a charge, but he's just drawn into another Chaos Strike. It's running a little bit dry for DawN here, and SamuelTsao has the best possible follow-up. A discounted Adept, and Warglaves is huge.
Well, no, he didn't draw into another Chaos Strike. He didn't play the Chaos Strike, is my point.
Sorry.
He just hero-powered instead. Whereas I think he should have played the Chaos Strike in order to draw a card instead of playing the hero power.
That's my mistake. I looked away because there was a mosquito going in front of my screen. But okay, that is still the same Chaos Strike, and so I agree with you. I don't like holding on to it.
Demons.
Because yes, you're potentially sacrificing 1 damage, but if you go Chaos Strike next turn and then draw the Glaive-bound Adept, you're just devastated.
We could potentially see that really soon. He's gonna go for it now just to get the cycle out of the way, but as you said, no mana to play a Gravebound off the top if it is the draw. It is playable though because Kayn is the one off the top, but you know, I don't think that's enough here. SamuelTsao just has such a huge swing available next turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely the play you're going for now, just to get the most stuff on the board, spend as much mana on as possible. And this is very fortunate for DawN, it's got to be said. There are like 5 times as many good 5 drops as there are 4 drops in the deck here.
The hand is running dry. SamuelTsao worried about DawN's possible burst. Metamorphosis on the other side could be devastating, but I don't think he can really afford to be playing around every single thing. I think he has the license to just build a board that says, I'm going to push lethal on the next turn if you can't find it.
Wait, is SamuelTsao not playing
the
Warglaives here? You can't swing again, Sam.
You can't. The effect of the text on Warglaives only comes into play if it's been equipped. Oh no!
He just didn't know how the card works, Gia. It's the effect of swinging with the Warglaives that allow you to attack again, not the other way around.
I see.
Oh. That is huge. A huge mistake here for Sam. So much missed damage and the Kayn left on board.
Perfectly honest, Gia, as well, it's a bit of an inexcusable mistake to be making at this point in Demon Hunter's life cycle. This is not a niche interaction.
Yeah. And if I were hesitant to say it before, I'm going to say it out right now. SamuelTsao has not been practicing enough.
Yeah.
You were talking about how the Mage example is a bring that if you feel like you're not up to scratch despite your practice, then you can rely on RNG. And I was saying, no. If you think you're not up to scratch, you put in the hours, you work as hard as you can, you test the matchups, you learn some, basic things like this. It's just so hard to watch.
I don't know who I feel more sorry for, Gia. SamuelTsao that he has to live with making this mistake, or us having to live with all the other casters and producers for the other region exploding in our chat at the moment with APAC lol. Oh man. Okay, well, this is still very salvageable for SamuelTsao, of course. He is ahead on card draw. He can be ahead on board at the end of this turn. The problem is, of course, he has given very real outs to DawN to hit lethal in the next couple of turns.
Poor Warlock.
Yeah, having allowed the Kayn to stay on board for the next couple turns means that if we were to see Skull into Gravebound or Metamorphosis in the following turns, or even just those 2 natural cards, one after the other, SamuelTsao is not completely safe. Granted, his quality of Skull and getting both in the first place, whereas DawN hasn't, has been so good that it's still a niche out that DawN needs to get. But just the fact that DawN has any chance of staying in the game is testament to how big of an error that was from Sam.
Of course, he still has some very, very powerful plays here. You know, I'm looking at I-Beam plus Bladebound in order to take this out, I suppose. Keep his health total nice and high. He is still miles and miles in the lead now, thankfully for him. As the Frozen Shadow Weaver kind of just shuts out any of the outs for DawN, I think, off the top here.
It has to be Skull into something.
Yeah.
Okay, can we possibly look at Warglaives now? That does 4. It gets frozen next turn, so is there a combination of a draw card and the cards drawn that can deal 9 without any face damage? It can't be Gravebound because he'll be frozen and he can't go face.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a chance that DawN just dies straight up here, depending on what comes off the top.
Altruist. 5,
if you
8.
go for
it's just lethal.
The draw here for G,
no, it's just lethal.
It has to, it has to be 100% lethal to go for it because otherwise you would look at having to freeze here. Yeah, so 6 with Kayn and Weapon, 8 with Chaos Strike.
It is.
Altruist for another 2 damage and the hero power. It is clean.
SamuelTsao just double, triple checking here to make sure that he's got the lethal in this Demon Hunter mirror, which was yeah, one of the more disappointing ones I've seen in a while, because obviously there's the sigil bearer, I suppose, of misplays here by SamuelTsao with messing up the glaive, the war glaives there. But I think another very big one for me was DawN not playing the Chaos Strike there earlier on. That was, I think, gave him a much higher chance of having a dead turn on the following turn. He was kind of dug out of that by managing to find the Cane off the top. But in the end, it didn't matter. Sam just had the better hand.
I hate to put it that way, but it's true. If we're looking at the gravity of mistakes there, yes, DawN's is probably wrong, but it's not the clear misunderstanding of how cards work that SamuelTsao committed. And I don't know what I can say at this point.
I mean,
maybe
nothing
his
to say.
priorities have gone elsewhere. I mean, maybe the conclusion we can draw from this is that it might be unfair of me to say that the practice hadn't been there from the beginning. Could be that after he took this loss streak, that he was already defeated and feeling like, I don't have a chance to stay in GM anyway. Why should I put in the practice? But that kind of mentality is just, I hate to see it.
Right, exactly. And, you know, if it's not in SamuelTsao's interest at the moment, that's fine. But having said that, this is kind of the point of GM. And APAC, I think, is doing that very well here. We are seeing the players who have been performing the worst down at the bottom. I don't want to dump on SamuelTsao too much, but if you want to get up to the top, you've got to put in the work because of the very, very stiff competition that we have up at the top, with, of course, primarily the Japanese players and a lot of the South Korean players as well, doing very, very stellar work here in APAC. So moving on to the next game here. No break necessary because we had one just a little bit earlier. It's going to be the Demon Hunter yet again for DawN on versus the Druid for SamuelTsao. A matchup that I still think should be very favored for the Demon Hunter here. It's one of those situations where the Demon Hunter matchup, the mirror, comes up often, but it's not always quite so devastating for the player who lost, because you're generally looking to take a win with the Demon Hunter anyway.
Completely agreed. I think DawN is in a very good position to even up the score up against SamuelTsao's Druid. I will say that the tech inclusion of Organ Infiltrator would probably be less helpful against Druid than it is in the mirror, because as Demon Hunter versus Druid, you are generally just looking to curve out and deal as much damage in the early game as soon as possible, and a minion that is more on the fragile side at just 1 health could potentially be swept up by a Moonfire really easily.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I still think, even then, we are liking the chances of the Demon Hunter in this matchup. The thing that I hope that SamuelTsao is going to go for here is, of course, as we've seen, the proactive game plan from a lot of the players. I want to see Wild Growth, Glowfly Swarm. I absolutely love. With this hand, I wouldn't actually even hate holding on to one of the Wraths just because it gives you a bit of removal early on, because you already have such a premium hand.
Yeah, he went for the insta full keep there, and just the 1 Wrath is still debatable in my opinion. I think that you would still rather be looking for Fungal Fortunes. The fact that he has Wild Growth into Glowfly justifies possibly keeping 1. I really dislike the 2 keep of Wrath.
Yeah, I mean, if you just basically plan your turns, even at the most base level, you've got a 2-3-4 with Wrath, Wrath, Wild Growth, Glowfly. You don't need the second Wrath. Like you said, to have the high roll of hitting Fungal Fortunes, never mind! You should probably get rid of the second Wrath. But who are we talking about here, Gia?
Let's take a look back first. That Fungal Fortunes is insane, but is it actually still the play here? Because if he just does go for that, and then it's Wild Growth into Glowfly, he's taking a whole lot of damage.
He is.
There is room for deviation here where maybe it's Wrath, and then you go Fungal on the following turn, and then you actually just coin out the Glowfly instead of playing Wild Growth.
Exactly. Or, alternative plan, Gia. Don't know how you feel about getting the Innovate so you can just go for it next turn for the full suite of 7 spells. I'm a big fan of that one, I think, actually.
Eric, I'm so close to breaking. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me.
I'm trying to push you over the edge here, Gia. I've got to be honest.
Don't be the Joker here. All it takes is 1 push. I mean, it worked out great for him.
Yep. And I honestly think that, although I disagree with the Wrath Keep, the play of Fungal Fortunes here I think is absolutely correct, because you perfectly laid it out. You don't have to play Wild Growth on 3. That is the turn that you can deviate on, and go for a Wrath instead if you have to.
I mean, yeah, if you get the Innervate, then it's good, right? I mean, I was still just looking at Wrath and then Fungal, because if you're, in most situations, not drawing an Innervate, then you still are going to have a dead turn between the two cost spell and the Glowfly play. Okay, I might be getting too nitpicky here because this is not an objective mistake. And we did not talk a lot about what DawN's game plan is. Still very much up in the air because he's faced with all of these flies, but he wants to keep going face, of course. It's gotten to a point, though, where after he attacks with Satyr Overseer, he can put all of the attack of the minions at 3 or higher, except for the generated 2/2. So he's not worried about value trades as a possibility from Harbour Wild.
That is a great point, and I think this is still very much his best chance of taking the win here. With having all these cards been drawn of Fungal Fortunes, there's a good chance we're looking at Overgrowth, Wild Growth, then Mount Seller, and all that nonsense as well. So just going face, praying for the Warglaives off the top in order to smooth out the curve, and then taking the lethal, I think, is perfectly fine here.
Turn 5 looks very problematic for DawN, though, and SamuelTsao is going to start Wrath here. I like this over the double Wraths. I think that he is still able to, in many cases, refill on the follow-up with Fungal Fortunes into another Glowfly, or even just the Rising Winds. So DawN, of course, thinking whether he wants to face tank this 2/2 or just I-beam it and cash everything to the face. This is going into the Mount Seller turn, so he's going to be very worried about not having many removal options at all. But the fact stands that if there's a big Mount Seller turn, he's probably not getting there against it anyway. I like that he's gone with the all-in push.
I like so too. This is clearly just hoping that your opponent has a weak turn. If they don't have the exactly the Mount Seller here, they should probably have a weak turn, because Overflow is not doing that much here. You still have full development for Skull. But I mean, we can clearly see here, SamuelTsao has a pretty insane turn still, with Wild Growth this turn, Ysera next turn. Actually, even having said that, there's the Innovate, so he's not even forced to go for the Wild Growth here to get the Ysera down.
I am looking at least one of these Rising Winds used for development and preemptively cashing in an Iron Bark.
Okay,
it's just at too low of a health total. Of course, the downside is that he can't taunt the Ysera afterward.
And then are you looking to start drawing with the other Rising Winds in order to try and find Crystal Power?
Yeah, Crystal Power is the big one here. You can't really afford to play Overflow with the amount of cards and not that much mana committed.
Yeah.
So you made the point that Wild Growth is not necessary because of Innervate, but it might still be okay here because that allows SamuelTsao, if he gets a 1-cost spell off the top, to go Ysera with that. And he saved the Iron Bark for the Ysera as well, which is very brave, but he's gonna need an insane...
He is, and I love the deviation here of DawN going for the Warglaives instead of the Skull of Gul'dan. It just sets up so easily lethal, and even if a taunt does come down, you're looking at a Metamorphosis just for lethal off the top now at any point.
Yeah. Another reason for holding on to Iron Bark for Ysera instead of small minion, of course, is that the small minion immediately gets taken down by Warglaives if it's there for DawN. So I don't think that was a mistake from SamuelTsao to hold on to it, but it's gonna have to be just the worst skull imaginable for DawN for this to be enough for SamuelTsao to stay in. Moonfire, though, can remove the unstealth Worgen.
To be fair, I don't think there are that many outs immediately for DawN actually to close this one out, because 15 is a lot of health to get through. He doesn't have enough mana to hit Glavebound or Metamorphosis quite yet.
What? He can just play Glavebound. Just swing your Sarah. Glavebound. Face.
Right, but I mean off the skull, sorry.
Off the skull, right. Oh my gosh.
Or
that
just Kayn
is a
off
big
the
one.
top in order to close things out. SamuelTsao there, I've got to be honest, I'm very surprised that he was losing after going Fungal Fortunes into Coin Innovate Glowfly Swarm for almost the full swarm of Glowflies. And still DawN, through his aggressive approach, was able to get there.
At the time, I was saying that I like the overgrowth instead of the double RAS. If I'm thinking of any point where SamuelTsao could have deviated more, it was that turn. I'm still not entirely sure of it. I think whether it was wrong or right, that is. But the big factor here was that Sam did not draw into his healing whatsoever. And that usually is what Druid needs to see in the game if they're not pushing a lethal of their own. The other reason for SamuelTsao to take trades instead of going for the RAS for removal is that he didn't have the Power of the Wilds or Savage Roar in his hand either.
Yep.
So it's not like the strategy lent itself directly in the race direction or in the outlast and try to heal and ramp up direction.
I mean, I think the direction was quite clear from SamuelTsao. It was to get Ysera down and taunt it up with an Iron Bark, which I think is generally a valid strategy to go for in that matchup because it's such a high amount of health. Only damage over the top, or of course, as we saw, Kayn is able to get the lethal there. But it's just the fact that, again, if you think back to the start, those two Wraths that were kind of just sitting around not doing anything for the vast majority of the game, I was advocating for keeping one. You were arguing maybe you don't even want to keep any at all in order to look for the high roll. Those could have been the Overflow or the Crystal Power. It's extra chance to hit those more important cards in the matchup.
Yes, indeed. And again, I think we keep going back to the keep versus not keep of removal, but the fact that Druid runs so much redundant removal, Wrath does the same as a Crystal Power, Hero Power, Moonfire, Hero Power can remove a lot of Demon Hunter minions anyway. That is another reason for throwing them, but SamuelTsao has gotten rid of it again, and once again has the Dream Opener as Druid.
He does have the he does have the absolute dream now, actually, with the Overgrowth thrown into it as well. I guess only the Innovate is what you'd need to make this even more pop-in. But I will say, DawN has got himself a decent aggressive hand in his own right.
Yes, the miss of a 1-drop is not negligible, because I think we saw a similar curve in a previous series where the Hunter was just 3 damage off, which was about as much damage as a 1-drop could have done, but DawN still has the 2-3 and could draw into a 4, but my gosh, we're gonna see the turn 3 Glowfly again.
Yep, 2 games in a row. Fungal Fortunes into Coin Vate Glowfly. I need some lessons from SamuelTsao. I'm sorry for ever doubting.
Yeah, I need to learn from him too. I thought only the Japanese players could do this.
Job's done.
It's the full 7, Derek! You don't even lose anything from using both Coin and Innervate, because Fungal Fortunes is just that good. Oh, DawN with the shake of the head.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a little bit more of the old DawN here, kind of giggling his way through the game as he is just getting absolutely turbo blasted out of here.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
That's the stream-appropriate way of putting it.
Oh, for trades, it feels so painful to watch. And he has the buff and the Wrath. Granted, the buff doesn't achieve so much here if he's looking to take trades.
And so therefore, it could be more development with the Rising Winds instead to set up for a better buff next turn. Or, I mean, even arguably just Overgrowth on this turn to set up for Overflow. Although that might be taking a little bit too much of a passive approach to the game.
Yeah, that play was the sketchiest to me. Although we say this doesn't achieve too much in terms of the trades, it does put more immediate pressure onto the board. And make no mistake, from this point, SamuelTsao is very much the aggressor. He
is, but I think this is still a trade turn here. It plays around Faceless Corruptor, primarily being able to take 2 value trades. And also, I think you just don't want to give your opponent any chance of turning the tide on you and going for a whole bunch of damage to face.
I completely agree.
Okay.
Wow, that... I mean, it's still on the back foot for DawN now, but he has about as decent of an answer as he could get here because SamuelTsao left this Huffer up.
Yep.
But is it going to matter in the face of just another Glowfly?
Yet to be decided, Gia.
Trade, redevelop. To be fair, that is weak to Zephyrus into Shadowflame, which would be available for DawN.
Well, that's not a good reason to not make a play, right? Like, everything is weak to Zephyrus at all points in this matchup.
Well, the reason to not make the Glowfly play is that he could go for Ramp this turn, which directly leads into Overflow for the follow-up.
And it does activate the Bog Beam as well, to be fair, for a bit of extra removal. That's fair. Okay, that's fair.
I mean, I was looking at the Overgrowth and remove with Crystal Power and possibly even the Bog Beam there, so he could still maintain 2 minions.
But can you have a decent read that they don't have Zephyrus in hand here? Obviously, at 2 mana, there's not any good answers to a board full of Glowflies, so they wouldn't have necessarily played it on 2. On 4, sorry. And then on 5, the play of the Corruptor is probably better than going for Shadow Madness as well.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is wrong by any means. It's very valid to go back for the reasoning that maybe you just don't have the Zephyrus and this is potentially game-winning very soon. And he has hit that outcome where DawN is instead forced to go for Diving Griffin and the guaranteed Zixar off the top because he already drew the other Rush in the Faceless. I'm just saying that there was room for consideration for the round.
Yeah. And I think overall, this type of game plan is generally the one I prefer to go for, where if they do have the answer, which in this case is Zephyrus, and you're not blown out of the game, you just go for it, because a lot of the time, they don't. And then all of a sudden, you are miles in the lead.
The other, I suppose, factor to consider for maybe leading up into an Overflow turn instead was the fact that SamuelTsao didn't have any other payoff cards, no Savage Roar or Power of the Wild to immediately threaten lethal. I can see that my line would potentially be weak to DawN's follow-up. It's just bigger minion plus decent-sized minion lines up well against your 3-3 and 3-1. And SamuelTsao is able to get advantage because DawN is not able to answer it. What's it? Oh! Unleash.
I mean, that's a board clear with the Dwarven Sharpshooter as well. That doesn't win the game, though.
Not quite, especially since we're looking at a Mount Cellar follow-up.
I think you are looking at...
Can DawN ever go for a partial clear and send some of the Hound's face instead? He has a decent read on no Savage Roar and no second buff. He could just clear 2 of these, go for the Dwarven Sharpshooter.
What does that even do,
and the trade.
Like, getting a couple of these face, he's still so far away from winning the game.
If SamuelTsao misses the trades, it gives him his own out for Zephyrus Savage Roar, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm grasping at straws here.
Honestly, valid thinking considering this series, Gia.
Because the trades never win either.
Yeah.
Because that would just be saying, I hope SamuelTsao doesn't have anything to do with 7 cards in hand and another draw.
No, you're absolutely right. Whereas now, SamuelTsao has plenty to do here with the Mount Cellar, triple spell, pew pew pew, and you're looking to lock up the game pretty quick, I think.
Shoot away. Poor Brightwing. Never has any friends. And I hate to see the look on DawN's face. Looks very defeated.
That's a good draw. He's still dead if he plays it, but it's a good draw.
Yes! Good point.
Yeah, Power of the World Hero Power. He's going to close this one out for SamuelTsao. A game away, Gia, from getting his first win of Grandmasters for this round-robin season.
And it would be against a crucial opponent, because as far as the people he could potentially pull down in their score to actually be relevant to his tiebreakers and chances of not being immediately relegated, DawN is one of the prime candidates aside from Frosty.
That's right. You're seeing him starting to look a little bit more defeated yet again, as this is a pretty historic moment for SamuelTsao. Not only would this be his first win of round robin, this would be the first time we've seen him win on stream at all this year. We didn't see him once in the Swiss portion because he came bottom 8 all 3 weeks. And now, finally, after 0-4, this could be the start of the ultimate redemption, Gia.
It could be indeed, but what is the deck he's left with, Derek?
Yay!
We have very diligently avoided any mention of this mage up until now, but unfortunately, I can hardly even look at it. Now we have to analyze it.
Okay, I've thought of a better way of phrasing my point yesterday.
Okay,
because
let me hear it. I'm so excited.
Right, so your point was, which I 100% agree with, if you're not doing well in Hearthstone, what you should be doing is practicing, making sure you have the best possible lineup, grinding away 100% to maximize your odds. Correct. However, this deck is the get-rich-quick scheme of Hearthstone. This is the deck where you keep Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron against Hunter, because you're saying, you know what, Gia? I'm the kind of gamer who misplays the Warglaives of Azzinoth to miss the attack. I'm the kind of gamer that keeps Box on the mulligan and just scams my opponent out the game. SamuelTsao, I bloomin' love you.
I'm out of breath. You keep talking.
I mean, Gia, this is insane. The time we saw SamuelTsao play this deck yesterday was in this exact matchup, and he got stomped. He was just curved out and killed so quickly. Whereas now, he realizes what his win condition is, Gia. It is Dragoncaster into Puzzle Box on curve.
I would say Dragoncaster into any big spell is a fair enough win condition for this deck. And so you should keep the Dragoncaster because that's the one that activates all the others, whereas all the others are somewhat redundant. But you know what? You're right. The box does things that are unimaginable. The question is, will he live to turn 6?
He kept Box and he got triple 1-dropped, Gia.
Yeah. Just desserts!
Job's done.
Sometimes. It happens. Punishes happen.
Well, I mean, it's not even a... Like, my point is that it's so ridiculous to keep Box here. Obviously, I'm kind of memeing it up at this point, but against one of the most aggressive decks in the meta at the moment, of Highlander Hunter, and you keep Puzzle Box in the mulligan. What is there even to say at this point?
The end is coming!
There's the fact that it may just be his win condition indeed. I think you've pushed me over the precipice. You've done it, Derek. You broke me.
This is, trust me, this is a lot easier if you just let go of your sanity.
Okay.
And devastatingly enough, Gia, as it currently stands, we're not even going to get to see the blocks because DawN has lethal with Zephyrus next turn, I believe.
Yeah.
With a Savage War.
SamuelTsao has top decks to prevent that. Frost Nova.
Please, DawN, just pass one turn. You've
Even
won this
Ray of
game.
Frost. Even Arcane Breath into discovering one of those freezes. It's possible that we see the box. But it's that this is the second time we've seen this mage this weekend, and yet again it's just done nothing.
Yeah.
Actually nothing!
Just, okay, ping alone keeps him alive here, Gia. He is not out of the game, even to a Savage Roar to 10 damage here.
The end is coming!
Yeah. Not enough mana yet to go for Coin Bloodlust. Oh my, we're gonna see the box. So, from DawN's perspective, he has to know that if SamuelTsao is doing anything impactful, it's gonna happen next turn. The Dragoncaster is available. And so, is he meant to just push as much damage possible anyway? We could have seen a hybrid approach where you can still Zephyrus Savage Roar and give the rushing Locust part of you push a lot of damage face, but still maximize the clear the Doomsayer.
Would it offer Savage Roar there though? If you don't have lethal,
that's a good point. Maybe
it might just offer Power of the
not,
Wild. I think.
And so he's holding Zephyrus instead for a not negligible amount of burst. He draws a dragon, suddenly the Scale Rider, the Corrosive Breath are both active.
Gia. It's
no,
happening.
I'm not here.
Whoa! Holy Light? Oh,
Not
wrong
on
place.
his face. Okay. Another box.
Bungle Fortunes to discard his entire deck.
Minion! But it did not discard a Dragon Caster, so it has actually cycled them closer to drawing the other Dragon Caster.
Finally, you get it,
Oh,
Gia.
My hand is too full.
Okay, he can't draw the Dragon Caster.
No!
It's gone! Dragon's gone!
Disaster!
And there's a dragon for DawN now!
Okay, real time now that we're out of Meme-topia here. DawN has to consider Counterspell, which is why he's starting with the coin.
Right? And you said it's not Counterspell, could still be Spellbender, but that still means the face damage goes, well, face.
Exactly. And so now, Hero Power Scale Rider. Yep,
Yes.
that's yet more damage.
Now I think
Against a
DawN's
deck that has no healing.
correct. Well, it has Box, that's healing.
Great point, Gia, I apologize.
It has Cartoon Defenders from the Power of Creation, that's healing. And I guess for DawN, the biggest concern right now is Ice Barrier. He also knows entities, so he can put it on being Barrier or Vaporize. And the Netherwind part. But you know, you're Hunter. You don't need to concern yourself so much with the Ice Barrier. Just keep pushing the Hero Power button, and of course, he has Zephyrus for an eventual Lava Burst.
I mean, as it's currently standing, even like a Shadow Madness is getting pretty close to lethal here, just to steal the taunt and attack with it itself.
But he doesn't know it's not Ice Barrier, is the thing.
Of course, sorry. Yeah, good point.
They're just taking it nice and slow. Is lethal with Hero Power Zephyrus Fireball. He knows it's not Counterspell. So SamuelTsao's only out is non-existent as far as I can see it, because the box is in hand. Tortolan cannot pull it.
And so, are there any 6-drops that can save him? It could be Cartoon doesn't do it.
Rushing Lifesteal, right? Yeah,
right, exactly, yeah. He needs, like, Sandhoof Waterbearer. I mean, obviously impossible at 5 mana, but he just needs to pray the Zephyrus isn't there.
Maybe it was Tortolan to look for her Conjure's Calling. Oh wait, that's not even in the deck. And of course, from Samuel's perspective, he doesn't even know the Zephyrus was there to begin with. So he's just going for the Deep Freeze, hoping to survive a couple more turns to make it to Reno, but he will get... You know, it's bad news, but I don't feel like particularly for him that he is dead here.
Well, I mean, to be perfectly honest, Gia, at this point, I wonder if SamuelTsao was really trying that game, because Puzzle Box is a horrendous keep in this matchup. You know, I was joking at the start because it's fun, but if we want to actually get serious with him being sad at losing here, you can't... It's a 10-mana card that is only good if you draw one of your other activators, which is already good, as you pointed out, with the Conjurer's Calling or the Deep Freeze.
It's just really tough for me to still find a way to justify this, because I want to be on the player side as much as possible, but
me too.
Bring up a great point. Big mistake with the Warglaives into what seemed like a just completely defeated keep. Yeah, just said, Yogg, take the wheel, and it did, but didn't quite get there. And you know what? I'm happy for DawN, because if that puzzle box was too insane, I nearly would have just taken off my headset and had a shout before I came back to cast this series.
Oh, 100%. I mean, even though I think we can disagree with a couple of DawN's plays along the way, it's fairly minor stuff in comparison, to be perfectly honest. I think DawN absolutely so far is the deserving winner of this series to go up to what would then be, I believe, 3-3 in overall score, which puts him in a pretty good position, to be perfectly honest, in Division B. Despite starting off so devastatingly bad, he'd be above Tyler at that point, obviously well above Frosty, sorry, not Tyler, Staz at that point, and of course also Frosty and SamuelTsao right down at the bottom.
Yeah, that would be a huge turnaround for DawN, who started off 0-3, I believe, and then just started his win streak now and is really looking to consolidate that and put himself at a 50-50 score, which, while not amazing, the way that the divisions are shaped means that it is just good enough to avoid 7th and 8th. Maybe still scary to be in the relegation bracket, but the difference between having no second chances at all and having that chance to fight your way out of a 4-man bracket where only one gets relegated is enormous.
And even then, I think he's still looking at potentially getting up to the top 4. If Tom60229 loses his next 2 matches, or sorry, next 3 matches, actually, I should say, and DawN can win his remaining match after this one as well, then he has a chance of ending up in the top 4. But that is a story for another time, because right now he needs to focus on winning this match right now, which I have to say, Gia, I haven't played all too much of, absolute ridiculous Mage up against Druid, but I think it's probably going to be less favored than the Hunter is, which feels like a huge favorite up against the Mage.
I would agree. Hunter has ways of dealing face damage without actually having to play minions on the board, which is what Mage can prey on with the freeze effect, the Bust Nova. These are all made somewhat more consistent by the fact that they are 2 buffs in the deck. And SamuelTsao has actually hit the good half of his deck in the opener.
He has. These are much more of the cards you're looking for to curve out. And Dragon Caster as well. This hand is premium. This is about as good as it gets with the deck.
Yeah.
Obviously, generally, you want to use puzzle box when you're behind on board, more so than ahead, because I think you're more likely to get symmetrical board clears or, single target that targets your own minion than you are to get buffs. But if he does start to fall behind to an early Glowfly or a Mount Seller coming down soon, it's not bad.
Yeah, and I didn't go at this because it unlocks puzzle box. It means that suddenly most of the top decks in his deck are really good now. Of course, he's going to have the time to get there because I'm looking at the coin Twilight Drake's curve. Or he could just go for this Novice, get him closer to the power of the creation, so then he could play 4-cost minion into coin Dragon Caster. So far, though, only one more shot at a payoff spell off the top if he wants to be playing Dragon Caster in 5. Unless he's just a box while ahead.
Do you think he's not, Gia? Based on the previous games?
Whoa. I'm a bit surprised that DawN is not going for a bigger payoff here. Could have just overflowed that turn.
Take a look at the actual deck for SamuelTsao, because this is an interesting play, absolutely, and it deserves taking a look at the possible answers. There's no Polymorph, no Fireball, there's no Rolling Fireball. There's very limited answers, actually, overall to this. I think this is actually really smart by DawN. The only real immediate answer that is available is Malagos Coin Polymorph, if he hits exactly Malagos's Polymorph, or Puzzle Box.
Yeah, in terms of immediate removal, I was thinking Deep Freeze is a punish, but it's just frozen. It doesn't actually stop it from generating more minions, but we are gonna go on the crazy train.
Oh! What is happening, Gia?
What am I watching? Twilight Drake can attack, it's green.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen all the spells. One could have healed the Mount Seller, I don't know, or SamuelTsao is just waiting to take the trade, waiting for all the resolutions.
That was insane! He gained a mana, got secrets, cleared the board, developed tutus.
Drew a card. I need
Got
words,
another
Derek.
Conjurer's Calling.
Ah,
Even gets Solarian for the next
It's
turn.
too full.
Ah!
And now he's in the weird spot where he's so far ahead as Mage that do you even want to play Solarian? Of course, it can only target Malfurion's face for the spells that can go face, but when your opponent doesn't, the Solarian, not actually sure how that works at that point. Does it default to targeting your own because it can't target opposing
Yes,
minions?
yeah. If it's
Okay.
single target that can't go face, like rolling
Right.
fireball or polymorph, then it will target your own guys.
Yes. Flame Strike and Blizzard will work as normal, even though they're
Exactly.
not killing anything. So for Sam, we could just look at Twilight Drake
That's
and
the
call it a
sensible
day.
play.
Yeah. Because if he expects a big push on the other side, then the Solarian gets really good.
What to do?
Yeah.
What to do?
Oh, Gia, I'm such a mix of emotions right now. Like, part of me is like, you know, this is hilarious that SamuelTsao is bringing this stupid deck and is somehow managing to do, like, okay with it in this game. But on the other side, look at DawN, look at his body language. Like, he has been so devastated these last couple of weeks. And he's this close. My fingers are really close together right now. This close to turning it around, and he has to deal with this.
Yeah. I have to feel for him, taking every swig of his energy drink that he can. Alright, the sensible play from SamuelTsao. And DawN can respond with his own push onto the board. He has the Glowfly with the Soul of the Forest. Because as far as I'm seeing it, the Mount Seller doesn't get enough done this turn.
Agreed. Of course, doesn't have the Savage Roar yet, but he can dig for it on the following turn with Rising Winds or Overflow.
Right? And the fact that this has 2 layers means that the Solarian has to hit the sweeps.
I mean, only once
not
really,
necessarily
though, right?
quite right, because
Yeah.
he's got a lot of minions to trade.
The other play, of course, is Tortollan Pilgrim, which can find... oh, no, wait, there's no Blizzard or Flame Strike in the deck. Okay, so you're pretty much on Solarian here.
I wonder.
It could find Frost Nova, which is very significant for board lock purposes.
Basically GG if Frost Nova hits, I think.
Uh-huh.
I have become one with the void.
But it's not guaranteed as far as I can see. Still more spells than that remaining. Okay, the first one. He has this arcane missiles with spell damage too.
One's out on you.
You know, I can't even call this particularly lucky for SamuelTsao because just the way that Solarian works is that it almost guarantees you a very strong board clearing effect.
Oh,
But
Gia, my
man,
heart is
I
breaking.
feel for DawN. Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, we can have a joke about SamuelTsao and his obviously suboptimal play this series, but at the same time, this game, you know, I think he was doing everything right, to be perfectly honest. The deck is kind of a joke in its own right, but I think he was making the correct plays along the way. And it will be, if this doesn't turn around quickly for DawN, his first win that we are seeing on stream of Hearthstone Grandmasters for 2020.
Yeah, I would struggle to find outs for DawN at this point. And I'm the person that always says Diving Griffin, Diving Griffin. It could be happening again here, but the way the series has been shaped, and just summons the worst beast as well.
The fact that he's got Pyroblast as well.
Okay. The breakpoints for the damage don't work out really well here. Wrath and Crystal Power is still one short of dealing with the Solarian, so he's gonna start with 2 damage on Solarian and dig for Griffin. I think it's getting dire enough that he needs to go for that. Okay, just gonna take the board that he has, buff it, but it is so difficult to hope that this actually sticks at this point, Mage with almost all of their mana unlocked.
How close to lethal is this now? Dragoncaster plus Pyroblast?
It is very close.
Can you punch through his exact damage? If you go... No, it's not quite there.
What to do? What to do?
You're like 3 points off lethal, I think.
He can conj the Mount Cellar, and
Okay.
unless we see Winged Guardian... Oh my god. You can punch through a lot of this, but the problem still stands that he doesn't actually have a full board freeze in hand. He had the Tortolan to fish, possibly, for Frost Nova, but he's gonna take the more measured approach here of clearing off quite a few minions, just go for the deep freeze to freeze Mukla, and
This is fine.
DawN cannot actually scrounge together a lethal damage of his own.
Yep, he never dies here. Double Savage Roar, Power of the Wild, whatever, doesn't matter here. And DawN is left with no way in his deck to clear this off.
Bungle can dig him towards Ysera? No, I mean, it has to not immediately draw Ysera, of course, because it would be discarded, but I don't see it anymore. DawN's fighting for his life.
And it's slipping away, Gia.
The best he's got here is just a Rising Winds for development.
Time waits for no one.
I mean, this win alone, Gia, this keeps SamuelTsao in some slight glimmer of hope of not facing relegation, and it drags DawN back down to the depths of despair, potentially looking at that bottom 2 spot yet again.
It's gonna be so tough for DawN, as we've seen that he's one of the players that's affected most by a change in morale. You could argue SamuelTsao is affected by it too, but in a very different way. Power.
I mean, it just doesn't matter. You probably pick the Arcane Breath here, to be perfectly honest, because you have so much stuff to spend your mana on.
Mm-hmm. He just deep freezes, goes face twice. DawN tries to respond with a Glowfly, but then there's just lethal on the other side with Pyroblast.
Put him out of his misery, man. It's over. There is no out for DawN anymore. There is nothing.
Whenever I watch EU and board controls on, he also bobs his head a lot because he's listening to music. SamuelTsao appears to not be listening to anything unless he has it on speaker, but he's bobbing away anyway, vibing, because you know what? This must be huge for him. First win on stream this year.
Huge congratulations to SamuelTsao here, taking the win. It was a very weird and roundabout way to get there, and a long, long road to get to the first win on stream, at least here in Grandmasters. But I think he's finally done it now.
Yes, he has indeed. If
My heart
DawN
goes out
even
to
wants to
DawN.
stay alive on board, he has to dig for a taunt, but
Yeah, I mean,
hardly ever gets there.
I will say as well, however, that for me at least, I am finding the urge to feel bad and a bit salty on DawN's behalf, losing to this deck. But I will say, as I myself was pointing out at the start, you know, you can bring any 30 cards you want, as long as they're standard, to your deck. There's no bad strategy, or there's no distasteful strategy, I should say. You should bring whatever you think is best. Many people would disagree with SamuelTsao here. He brought these cards, and whatever the deck does, you know, you can be salty about it on DawN's behalf, but SamuelTsao put it in there for a reason.
I'm glad you changed the word bad to distasteful.
Yeah.
Because I would argue there are definitely bad decisions of cards to bring.
Sorry, I just meant there's nothing that you can't go for because it's in poor taste.
Right,
Or against the competitive integrity. You know, you just build whatever you think is best, which here for SamuelTsao has worked out for him at the final hurdle.
Alright, we'll give him that. I wonder if he actually does think this is best. or if it is, as we were saying a while ago, more of leaving it up in Yogg's hands or Yogg's box, to be specific. But there you have it. SamuelTsao has finally taken a win on stream, and DawN, as you said, is now back in the danger zone. And crucially, now DawN, SamuelTsao, and Frosty are hovering around the same scores. I think SamuelTsao and Frosty both at 1 and 4, and DawN slightly ahead at 2 and 4, but that's only because he's had one extra game to play. So that means that Frosty and SamuelTsao could equalize that score after they get their next match in. And the three of them have a rock, paper, scissors relationship in terms of who has beaten who so far in round robin. So the tiebreaker, should the three of them be the ones at the bottom, will actually come to the second tiebreaker and not just head to head.
Well, they do, Gia, but just to throw an extra spanner into that works, Staz is at 5 games played now, and he's at 2 and 3. If he loses his next match as well, he's potentially going down to that bottom 2 games won at 6 games played, 2 and 4 record, which would mean, you know, you're even more likely, as you said, to go to tiebreaker 2, where things get even more complicated, of course. We're going to have to work our way through that as it comes to it, of course. But, oh man, it is some really, really ridiculous Hearthstone that is happening now in that game. But I got to say, Gia, it's like now, trying to put that behind me for the moment. In the last game of the day, which we can take a look at now, between Tyler and Tom60229, what I will say is that these two players, despite ending up in Division B, have been playing, in my opinion, some pretty strong Hearthstone consistently.
Yes, this is what I would like to throw in the faces of people who say APAC lol. Yes, it has been quite a difference to watch right before this, I have to admit, but there are some of the best players in the world also in this region. Maybe the average skill level is like not quite on par with Europe, but if you look at our best of the best, I genuinely believe Tom60229 and the likes of Glory and Alutamu can go toe-to-toe with some of the best out there. Tyler, of course, was somebody who was in Europe with and more recently moved to APAC, also a very strong player. And I just can't wait to cleanse my palate and watch top-level Hearthstone.
Me too, Gia. And also, that's an interesting point you bring up about Tyler being kind of an ex-European Hearthstone player, because he does bring a lot of that with him over to the APAC region. 15 out of 16 players this week have brought Druid. The only one not to do so is Tyler, who obviously does practice a lot more with the European players, the American players as well, the Grandmasters in particular. In those regions, of course, Druid is significantly less popular. He does not think that it is an especially good deck. And so far this weekend, to be honest, the jury's kind of still out as to whether or not it is a good deck. We have seen some absolutely astronomical high rolls with it, and also some pretty disastrous draws as well along the way. I think evening out an overall decent deck. But that could very possibly be the leg up here for Tyler, is that he has the Quest Warlock instead.